Does this matter for the future of Joe Biden's political career? He's got a job to do as president, but a lot of people think we're beyond the point of a course correction here.
Yeah, I think the president's lost control of events here. And, it's not really a question of whether, it's sort of when and how. And I think it's going to be pretty soon. It's just starting to tumble out of control. And I don't think there's any stopping it for the White House right now.
Well, that's pretty remarkable to hear you say, Charlie, because to this point, President Biden has remained quite stubborn in his assertion that he is staying in this race and still believes that he can beat Donald Trump. Are you essentially saying that there is no way at this time that he has a credible path to doing so? I try to be very, very cautious. You know that. And I can't find anywhere reason to be cautious here, because you can't run a campaign without money. And I think theirs is drying up. You have to have support of party leaders. That's drying up. I think, we're overtaken with events here, and it's really out of his control. I think it is unfortunate that, the NATO leaders are not, in the air yet and fully. And, this is happening now. If they had been a little bit more proactive, they probably could have bought a little bit of time. But I think it's too late now, really.
Well, Charlie, I can't believe what I'm hearing from you. Your caution and your credibility is the reason why we call you. And so Joe Biden's an hour away from this. What are you going to be looking for tonight? Does it matter what he says? I think your answer is no, but he's also got a legacy to protect. There are questions about the direction of fundraising. And to your point, I don't mean to keep adding on questions here, but once these leaders get in the air, it's going to feel different. What are we talking about tomorrow morning?
The thing is, I think the president's like he's on a high wire. And does he make a misstep tonight? Does he make a misstep Monday with Lester Holt? I mean, that there's going to be a misstep at some point, and so that even if he tries to drag it out, it's only a matter of time before anybody would make a misstep and off they go. The thing is, these Democratic leaders, they like him, they appreciate him, they agree with most of everything he's done. They don't like the idea. Each one has been sort of waiting on somebody else to come out against him because they didn't want to do it themselves, and waited around. And that's probably what extended it, is there was a reticence among Democratic leaders to publicly come out and say, okay, time's up, because none of them really wanted to do this, and they don't want to hurt him because they really do like him. And but I think it's just a matter of days or hours or something.
Well, if the clock really is ticking, it becomes a question not just of the presidential race, Charlie, but what the effect will be in terms of the composition of Congress and the balance of it. We heard from the House Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries, just today, who said Biden isn't a liability. Democrats will take back the House. Do you think they can do so, or keep hold of the Senate, for that matter, with Biden on top of the ticket? Or is that actually what this is going to be about? Not just if Biden loses, but he makes others lose in extension.
I think Jeffries can't really say anything else. But clearly, it's roughly 50-50 whether Democrats could pick the House back up if there was no president top of the ticket discount or a disadvantage here. They've got no margin at all. That they can't afford anything above them to be dragging them down. And so it's just, the Senate is probably gone for Democrats anyway, but how deep is the hole going to be? Do they lose 2 seats, 3 seats, 4 seats? And how much longer would it take them to get back out of that hole? And the same thing in the House. So nobody up there is having a good time. They're not enjoying offing their leader, but it's now become a matter of sort of preservation. And, whether it goes to the vice president or whether it opens up and goes to a, Carville-like scenario at the convention, I don't know. I think the odds are probably pretty high that it ends up being Harris. And while that's not necessarily the optimal solution, it may be the best that Democrats can have at this point. But, it's possible it gets opened up, but I think the odds are probably against that.
How much time does Joe Biden have here? We're going to go to Milwaukee next week. Charlie, maybe you'll be there. And I suspect we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about vice presidential announcement, Donald Trump, and many of the ideas that surround his campaign. When we get back to reality after the convention, you said maybe hours or days. Does this conversation need to end?
Yeah, I'd probably put a $5 down on over the weekend, to be honest. I don't know that it'll get, deep into Monday if it gets to midday Monday. But there's just going to be a lot of pressure just to go ahead and do it. But, obviously, I think, clearly some of the closest people to him have started throwing in the towel themselves, and they'd be the dead last to do it, short of the president himself and his family. But I think he's going to find himself, or he's finding himself very isolated, and he'll figure it out. It's against every fiber of his body, but I think in the end he will do what he needs to do, and that end won't be too far off.
Okay, so if we think about the potential sequence of events you're lining out here, if Joe Biden were indeed to decide on the eve of the Republican convention that he is leaving the race, how does that then change the nature of what the Republicans are about to do in Milwaukee next week? If you're Donald Trump, does that make you think differently about who you want to pick to be vice president? I mean, certainly some kind of strategy shift would need to happen.
Yeah, I don't know how much it would affect Trump's decision, but it sure would step over the news at the Republican convention. I don't know how you get a message across if you've got a president stepping away from a campaign and all the focus going on, okay, what are Democrats going to do next? So it'll be a little hard for Republicans to get their message through that week. But, it's my guess is that former President Trump has already made up his mind, but just hasn't tipped his hand yet. But it's getting a little late to make up his mind, and I think everybody's expecting something, tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday, to get word of who he's going to pick. So this is all going to be having a really tight time frame.
Will Joe Biden's departure be hastened by a critical mass of congressional Democrats calling him to drop out tomorrow?
Yeah, I think that a lot of members have been listening to Pelosi and say, please, let's get this NATO thing going. But, can you just hold off? Can you just hold off a little bit and let everybody get out of town? Then that would be better off. And I think that's ultimately what will end up happening. But, that picture, the graphic you've got up, that's just going to get bigger and bigger. And, it's now to the point where it's pretty much, I don't think this is survivable, to be honest.